What's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with ScoopDuck on 3. It is Thursday, November 14th, 2024, and Oregon is gearing up for a road trip into the heart of Big Ten country out there in Madison for a Saturday matchup with the Wisconsin Badgers. And we are bringing you a preview of Saturday's game between the Ducks and the Badgers. Joining me to break it all down is ScoopDuck owner and publisher Justin Hopkins. And then we also have a very special guest from SB Nation. We have Rohan Chakravarthi on to talk some Badgers. Rohan, how you doing, man? Thanks for being here.
I'm doing good. Thank you both for having me. It's going to be a fun show.
And then we got Justin out in Wisconsin right now. The internet might be a little bit questionable. We're going to do our best to have him and then share his perspective on this. Justin, how is the Midwest treating you so far?
It's a little windy out here, a little cold. It's not bad, but it's a little cold, but great. It's so far. I didn't have a ton of interactions, but last night ran into some folks, and a lot of people at first like, "Oh, you're a Packers fan." Like, not exactly. So the green's throwing some people off, and I totally understand that. Apparently, the Packers played the Bears this weekend in a big game. So, Duck fans, if you're coming out in green, just be ready to be misidentified as a Packers fan.
There you go. There you go. Well, Rohan, let's get into some Badgers talk, man. The Badgers are coming off of a bye week, but before that, they had a 42-10 loss to the Iowa Hawkeyes. So just kind of to get the ball rolling here, what would you say is the vibe maybe around the program and around the fan base right now?
Yeah, around the program and around the fan base, I would probably say are two different vibes. The program, they're coming off a bye week. They were able to flush the loss out. Got to talk with the players, the coaching staff. They're excited. Their mentality going into this game, it's an opportunity. Nobody expects them to win, so there's nothing for them to lose. Want to go out there, find a way to play football, see what they can do. But as for the fan base, it's been the last loss. You can't lie. It was a disappointing loss. It's a rivalry matchup against the Iowa Hawkeyes. You're coming off a game where you just competed against Penn State, the number 3 team or 4 team in the country, and it was a 1-point game going to the fourth quarter. And then you just, you get blown out by Iowa. It wasn't even close, 42-10 on the road. So the fan base right now, deservingly so, is disappointed, especially because you're coming off of that game into a game against arguably the top team in the country, a team that has looked dominant, especially the last few weeks, winning games by 21 points in 3 consecutive games. And so, I think the fan base is a little bit riled up at the moment, looking to see how this team finishes out, because it's going to be a crucial last 3 games as you try and get bowl eligible.
So,
yeah, hopefully I'm not jumping in wrong here. Oh, sorry, Max. My bad.
Go for it.
No, as you guys can tell, I'm lagging a little bit, so I'm trying to jump in and stay involved. But my question to you, Rohan, is obviously that loss to Iowa was bad. It looks bad. You look at the box score, it looks terrible, right? And I think Duck fans are kind of assuming that that's the Wisconsin team they're going to get on Saturday. Does, in just from your perspective to enlighten Duck fans, is that game in particular, which is their last game, kind of an anomaly, or have things kind of trended down for Wisconsin these few weeks? And, just kind of what are you expecting from them on Saturday?
Yeah, I think that, when you look at that game, I don't know if I can say that it's an anomaly because they didn't play well in that game, but it's different from the way that they were playing in the month before. Wisconsin's had a up and down season, but it's truly been, you've seen the ups and then you've seen the downs. Wisconsin started the year not too strong. You had some uninspiring victories over an FCS team and over a low D1 team. You had the loss to Alabama where they get blown out. You had the game against USC where it seemed like they were turning things around in the first half. You end up losing 28-0 in the second half to get blown out there. And then they had the really strong stretch, a 52-6 win over Purdue. And really, it's them beating bad teams, but them beating bad teams by a wide margin. 42-7 to Rutgers. You then had a 20-point win over Northwestern, and then you play competitively against Penn State for 3 quarters. So fans are wondering, are we going to get the Wisconsin team that competed as hard as they did, were as tough and physical as they were in that 4-week stretch, or is it going to be more so how they played against Iowa? To me, I think when you come against Oregon, the way that this team is, I don't know that the Iowa game necessarily is the most reflective, but it also kind of tells you how if a team plays that style of football, it's going to be tough for Wisconsin to beat them. The Badgers aren't as strong in the run game defensively. That's where Iowa really thrived. They ran for 329 yards and 5 touchdowns against the Badgers in that game. Didn't really need much of a passing attack from quarterback Brendan Sullivan. And then offensively for Wisconsin, the key problem has been turnovers. Braden Locke, the quarterback, has thrown an interception in every single start this year. He has 8 in 6 games, and he threw 2 in that one. So if you can mitigate those issues, you give yourself a fighting chance. Wisconsin, unfortunately, hasn't been able to do that enough to where, they've put themselves in a position to win key games.
And I think with Wisconsin and just where they've been in recent years, this is a somewhat familiar opponent for Oregon because they've met a handful of times in the Rose Bowl, right? But my question for you, Rohan, is just a little bit about the identity of this Badgers team, because Luke Fickell has been there for a little bit now. I think when I've thought of Wisconsin, I think physical linebackers, I think dominating the line of scrimmage or contending at the line of scrimmage, which is why it was so surprising to see Iowa run the ball the way that they did. So what's your take on the identity of the Wisconsin program?
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a great point. When Luke Fickell came in, he wanted to kind of have a twofold approach. One, find a way to maintain the identity that Wisconsin has had, but two, also find a way to adapt. That's why he hired offensive coordinator Phil Longo, who brought together an air raid system. When you consider the air raid system, you've seen Wisconsin jump up with their passing metrics, although the efficiency it really hasn't been there as much the last 2 years due to a number of factors, transfers coming in, injuries at the receiver position, inconsistency, and also, quarterback play being a factor as well. So that has been an issue which hasn't maybe allowed Wisconsin to embrace their new look identity as much as you'd like them to, but they also are trying to find a way to kind of stick to their guns. The offensive line play has been much improved this year. Their pass protection has been some of the best in the nation. It's just their passing game overall hasn't, improved to the fact where you can really see those changes being reflective. They still try and run the ball at a high clip. Tawee Walker is the lead back here. He's gotten, a good, healthy workload ever since he was really evolving into the full-time starter in week 6. He's gotten at least 16 carries in each of the last few games. He's been the workhorse, really, and the Badgers have seen some success on the ground. Walker having multiple 3-touchdown games, multiple 100-yard games, so you've seen some success there. The issue so far, when you look at the defensive end, like you mentioned, is their defensive line hasn't really been as dominant the last 2 years. It's mainly been, an attrition of talent. In 2022, you lose Keanu Benton and Nick Herbig to the NFL draft, and there weren't that many pieces there to kind of replace them, and the Badgers are slowly getting back to that. They've recruited well in their 2024 recruiting class and even in their 2025 recruiting class, but it takes time to see some of those younger guys potentially develop into cornerstone pieces, which is why you're kind of seeing the limbo period right now where the Badgers are trying to figure out their identity while maybe not having the personnel they'd like up front, specifically on the defensive side.
Some great stuff there, Rohan. I apologize if it's not sounding great. I'm lagging a little bit too, it looks like, but we are persisting. We're doing everything we can here. Justin hopped out. He's going to try to come back in. But it does seem like this Wisconsin team is a bit of a work in progress when you look at the bigger picture under Luke Fickell. And I think that he came to that job in Madison with some pretty high expectations, of course, right? And understandably so, after taking Cincinnati to the playoff, as he kind of before he rode off into the sunset and chose to head up the Wisconsin program. So I think that you see some potential, of course, across various areas of this team, but Oregon's going to get the best shot that Wisconsin has this weekend because they're coming off of that bye. I'm interested to kind of see how they do. But injuries with We have Marcus Harper, who missed last game after getting banged up against Michigan. Right. So seeing how Oregon can establish the run, I think is going to go a long way in telling us how their offense goes. That they are not limping to the bye week, but they really need this bye week just with some of the nicks and bruises that they have there. And Jordan James was one of those guys that did get a little bit banged up last week, but it sounded like Dan Lanning kind of held him out for precautionary reasons. So if Oregon can establish the run, I think that's going to really help them go a long way. So I'm going to key in on guys like Dave Iuli and Kavika Rogers at that right guard spot. And maybe they'll get some other guys stepping up in the receiving game as well. We have Justin back here with us. So just to kind of continue this conversation, Justin, we're discussing a little bit about Oregon's offense and how it matches up with Wisconsin's defense and what we're going to maybe have our eye on there on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I'm sure Rohan knows this as well, but Oregon's really tough to stop on offense, right? Because they can run the ball and they can throw the ball. So it's kind of a pick your poison, there. And I guess maybe Max has already asked this, and I apologize because I had to dip for a minute there. But who on Wisconsin's defense really would be a factor in helping slow down or keep Oregon's offense in check, in your opinion, this week?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking, at the two different parts, in the secondary is where Wisconsin is at its strongest. You look at cornerback Ricardo Hallman, a guy who was an AP All-American second-team guy last year with 7 interceptions. Well, when you look at his statistics, not nearly as good. But it's not because of him. Hallman has been the 4th least targeted cornerback in FBS this year, just because teams are deciding, well, we're not even going to throw at that side of the field. We're going to leave that side of the field open. We're going to throw on the other side where cornerback Nazir Forkreen is. But more importantly, we're going to target the middle of the field because Wisconsin has been susceptible at giving up plays over the middle of the field. When you consider how they play in man coverage, the way that they man up, a lot of crossing routes and things like those concepts are where teams look to try and beat Wisconsin, knowing that, it's going to be tough, obviously, for you to cover man coverage sideline to sideline. And then in zone coverage, their linebackers aren't necessarily the strongest, so that's where teams look to pick them apart, try and find alleys in the middle of the field. So if you were looking at a player, I would definitely look at Ricardo Hallman. They also have do-it-all safety Hunter Wohler. Wohler was a guy who earned all Big Ten honors last year, and he's a guy who can play in a lot of different roles. You'll see him in the box trying to make plays at the line of scrimmage in the run game. You'll see him in their coveted dollar position, which allows him to kind of free range around the field, and you'll also see him as a back-end safety. He's a guy who plays nearly 100%, if not 100% of the snaps every single week. He's a guy who you definitely kind of want to keep an eye on. And then maybe, someone who might give him a little bit of an extra boost out in the front 7. It's transfer Elijah Hills, a guy who has slowly kind of grown a little bit into his role. More so Wisconsin likes to rotate their defensive linemen a lot. But if there was a guy who would really stand out in that group out of anybody, it would probably be him, a guy who can provide a little bit of pass rush, a guy who can stop the run a little bit. Now, facing a tough challenge, of course, with the interior over there of Oregon's offensive line, that could be a good battle. But I think that those 3 players would be ones I'd say to watch for if you were looking out on Wisconsin's defense this weekend.
So this Wisconsin defense isn't one that doesn't have playmakers. It's a talented group, and they're just still trying to put all of it together. But we know that Hills was one that Oregon was talking about, at least the players and the coaches were talking about this week in the press conferences. So that's a guy for them to key in on here as they head up to Wisconsin for this weekend. One of the areas I'm going to kind of have an eye on for Oregon, it is their skill talent, their skill players, because they'll probably be without Tez Johnson once again. Justin, I know you're maybe thinking that Trayshawn Holden could be in for a big game for that Will Stein offense, and he certainly has an opportunity. I think Terrence Ferguson is one I'm going to have my eye on because he had some uncharacteristic drops last week against Maryland, but he is someone that I think could really with I think that's an area where Oregon can try to attack the Badgers and just pick up some easy yards, and maybe we see the Yak game at play a little bit more for the Ducks.
Yeah, I went with Holden simply because I know Hallman is probably a first-round cornerback, and I would assume that his biggest the person he's going to face the most is Evan Stewart. I think if you're Wisconsin, you probably don't want him getting behind your secondary because he's so fast. So I figured obviously it's going to fall on, everybody else but Hallman, and Holden could probably take advantage there a little bit because he's a great receiver as well. Terrence Ferguson's always a great pick, but it certainly sounds like from talking to Rohan a little bit more that maybe the smart play for Oregon here is to run the ball, really establish the run, set yourself up on second and third and short and kind of keep yourself ahead of the chains a little bit. So that might be the key there. Flipping it around a little bit, obviously on offense for Wisconsin, they need to not turn the ball over. We know that, right? That's football 101 for anybody. Who needs to step up on offense for Wisconsin to keep them in this football game?
Really, it's not who, but a collective. And I'm talking about the offensive line. Wisconsin's a team that is going to ride that offensive line through good and through bad. That's the strongest part of really their entire roster this year. Of 5 that returned, 3 experienced starters, a guy who was an all AAC first team guy a couple of years ago, and Jake Renfro at center coming back from injury, and then a young up and comer who Wisconsin has really looked to start, the last few years in Joe Brunner. So you've got, NFL level tackles. You've got experience on that group. That's a group that you're definitely looking to ride upon, not only in pass protection, where they've been excellent this year, but also in the run game. Wisconsin's offensive line isn't as strong in the run game as they are in pass pro, but it also is in part because defense is keying on the run game, daring Wisconsin to throw the ball, knowing the inconsistencies that they've had there. You are going to need to find a way to have an effective run game against Oregon. Their explosive offense makes them so tough to contain on that side of the ball. So it's imperative that you find a way to kind of slow the game down and play at Wisconsin's pace. They still play at an up-tempo pace, but you want to have some, you want to have a twofold attack offensively to be able to set up some of those shots. Of course, Oregon has Jabbar Muhammad in that secondary. I believe he's expected to play in this one. And so when you're kind of looking at them, probably don't want to target on his side, but you're going to still look at those slot receivers, Will Pauling and Trech Kekahuna. Those are the kind of 2 of the guys who really key in on this offense, guys that Wisconsin kind of looks to, possession type of receivers, but help move the chains, chain movers more so out of the slot position. Wisconsin does operate with 2 slots a little bit, this year, in offensive coordinator Phil Longo, he mentioned this week he's going to want to involve both of those guys more together at the same time on the field. So those are some of the guys who I'd kind of expect you probably look towards. Talwi Walker, the running back as well. He's going to be a guy who's definitely going to get a good portion of workload. At least 15 carries is what I would assume, and potentially even more depending on how the game script goes.
We will have more on Oregon versus Wisconsin right after I tell you about Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Not sure what your guys' dinner plans are, but head on over to Ranchito at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. Try their homemade tortillas. They got great food, a great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy Ruben and let him know that Max Torres sent you. Max Torres, Justin Hopkins with ScoopDuck, back with you on a Thursday. On Saturday, talking with SB Nation's Rohan Chakravarthi, getting you up to speed on the Badgers, letting you know about Oregon's next opponent. We talked a little bit there, Rohan, about the Wisconsin offense and what they bring to the table. Oregon's defensive front has been stellar all year, and a big part of that has been Jordan Burch and what he's been able to do. Also got a little bit dinged up in that win over Maryland. One of his big highlights was the strip sack that Brandon Johnson scooped up for a fumble return for a touchdown. And then he also, Burch ripped off a 36-yard run on a fake punt. So Oregon's getting contributions all over that defensive front. I'm really excited to see what Jaden Moore is going to be able to do as a younger guy on that defensive line, outside linebacker group. So I think Wisconsin, if they want to get things going against the Ducks, they have to be able to run the ball. But Oregon has been, to their credit, very effective in stopping the run this year.
Yeah, that's I agree with Rohan. I do think that, if you're Wisconsin, you want to slow down the game, and B, you want to be able to stay in the game, right? You get down 21-0, and it makes the game really tough for Wisconsin. We all know that. I'm sure Luke Fickell knows that. Everybody on the team knows that. So, yeah, that's really an interesting dynamic there. I'm going to pivot slightly, Rohan. Oregon and Wisconsin have faced each other before, but this is now, a conference game. Oregon's coming to town. What's kind of the vibe, maybe just with, like fans and that nature of, Oregon's coming to town. We're excited to party with these guys or get them back out of Madison as soon as that we can. What's kind of the vibe of just having this game at Madison and kind of being able to interact with a different fan base a little bit?
Yeah, Wisconsin fans have been lucky in the sense they've gotten a couple of top opponents to already come to Madison this year. You mentioned Alabama, a top 5 team at the time. They obviously came back in week 3. Unfortunate outcome, 42-10. But, that was a game where Wisconsin was still trying to pick things together as a roster with a couple of transfers. And, they fell flat. You lose a quarterback in that game, so the loss was as expected. Then you have Penn State, a couple of weeks ago here, another primetime game. And Madison definitely comes out for the primetime games. You're going to feel the environment for sure. And, if Oregon fans are coming in, I don't think there's going to be bad blood necessarily. I think more so Wisconsin fans are going to embrace them. It's going to be, a couple of fun nights out if you're out here. But overall, if you're talking about fans in the direction of the program, I do expect to be a lively environment, even though that there is some unrest with the fans currently, just with how inconsistent this season has been and the expectations that came when Luke Fickell was initially hired to Wisconsin through the first 2 years.
Nice. It's fun to get a little bit of a feel for what to expect and not just from the game, but just the overall vibe, like you said, Justin, and what Oregon fans are going into. I have kind of a similar question for you, Rohan, and I haven't really asked this too much on the pod, but just as someone who gets to cover the Badgers, I don't know if you do more than just football, but what's it like? What's your favorite part of getting to cover Wisconsin? Because I imagine it's quite a bit different. We talked about how we're both from the Bay Area. So what's your favorite part about that beat?
Yeah, no, Wisconsin, it's fun. I cover, I run the site here at SB Nation, but I mainly cover football and basketball. I would probably honestly say it's the relationship that the organization has given with the media, in the sense they've been very open. With their access, with the way that they conduct things, it's a very media friendly space here. And so you've got to be grateful to the SIDs, both football and basketball, for being accommodative, for helping out, not only for students, but also for the local beat, And so I think the vibe when you come here to cover, sports in Madison definitely is different than you might see in some other areas. And so that's something I'm definitely grateful for, where I've kind of been able to jumpstart my career here. And this has been, a space that you've definitely felt welcomed in and have been able to grow in.
And access is always such a crucial part of it. And it's fun to just have strong relationships with everybody that you get to work with. I know I enjoy getting to kind of meet some of the other beat reporters when I go out to Eugene. I don't live there anymore, but it's always fun to see some familiar faces. Maybe one of the fun ones we can ask here, Rohan, for fans that are making the trip out to the Midwest, any bar or restaurant recommendations that you can share with our listeners so they know where to go once they get into town?
Yeah, if you come out, make the trip out here, there are a couple of spots definitely on Madison, in Madison, that a lot of people can go and enjoy. One of the more lively streets in the evenings and in the nights is Wisconsin's State Street. It's a road with a bunch of restaurants, bars. If you want a night out, you can go. If you want a bite to eat, you can go. And it's really popping from the early evening to the late night. So it kind of caters to all types of people. If you kind of want to be closer to campus, Regent Street right behind the stadium. That's another area where you can kind of see, a couple of fun bars are out there, and as well as a couple of food spots. So there are two main kind of streets if you want to kind of consider. But one thing you'll kind of notice, especially fans coming in for the first time, Madison definitely in the night can be a lively city, a lot to enjoy, and a lot of fans that are eager to not only talk ball, but to, enjoy some nights out.
Well, I'm excited to get it started tonight for myself. So, it sounds like I think I'm going to the W, State Street
Perfect.
Brats, and maybe Wando's. I think those are the three I'm hitting tonight. And hopefully I can get to all three and remember it. So, that's always the game within the game. But it's Thursday, so I got a day to recover. Rohan, maybe we can link up later and catch you if you're around. But I know, I speak for myself. We appreciate you coming on, and you had some great thoughts on the game and really enjoyed what you had to say. And I'm excited to check out this city. It's been great so far. I'm going to pick this up. I don't know if can everybody see? Nope. I can't get to it. Well, the state capitol is right behind me. Rohan knows that, but oh, there it is.
There it
You
is.
see it? There's the state capitol. There's my finger. Yeah. Anyways, they got
There it is.
I just learned this, but Audrey Munson's on top of the state statue, and she was like America's first supermodel or something. So clearly, Madison cherishes their hot women out here, and I appreciate that about them.
Well, yeah. So nice little view from the hotel with Justin. But yeah, I think just to kind of wrap it up a little bit. I mean, my final thoughts on this game. It's an opportunity for Oregon to get another signature win. Maybe not a signature win. I shouldn't call it that. Sorry, but I mean, Wisconsin's not an easy place to play, despite the Badgers not having the best season. That they know they're going to get the best shot from them. So it's an opportunity for growth to continue what they've been doing all year. Maybe you get some of those depth pieces in. And kind of get them more developed because those reps are going to be important down the line. This is a long season. And of course, we're seeing that it's starting to wear on teams all throughout the sport. So it's crucial how Oregon navigates this. And you want to try to get in and get out with as few injuries as possible and just get another win and get to the bye week. I feel like I'm thinking about Al Davis, just win, baby. But like, really, that's if you're Oregon, I think that's really what you want. You make this trip, your third trip out to the Midwest this season, also went to Michigan and Purdue. So you make one more trip to the Midwest, just get in there, get a win by any means necessary, and get into that bye week. Those are my final thoughts. What about you, Rohan?
No, I agree. You know, when it comes to the two different perspectives, like I mentioned, Wisconsin believes they have nothing to lose. Nobody expects them to win this game. I believe the spread is around 2 touchdowns or so, could even be higher at this stage. Oregon, for them, you know, it's a tough environment to play, but I think if they are able to play their style of football, they've been so commanding the last few weeks that they should come out with a healthy victory. Really, I'm excited to see some of the matchups. You know, does Oregon find their way through the air as much as they'll be able to, you know, as much as they have in weeks past? How is the ultimate dynamic going to be? And also, how does the game script kind of play along? Will it be a close game before Oregon pulls away, or what ultimately happens? Nonetheless, primetime action here in Madison should be a fun environment, and I'm definitely excited to see how this game unfolds.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, it's been awesome having you on, Rohan. And on Saturday, I think it's a 4:30 Pacific kickoff on NBC. So if you guys can't make the trip out to Wisconsin, that's how you can tune into this one. If you want to find more of Justin, you can follow him on Twitter/X at JHopkinsSD. You can also find me anywhere at Torres Sports. If you want to find Rohan, you can follow him at Rohan Chakrav on Twitter/X. But we really appreciate you coming on, Rohan. If you guys are watching, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're almost at 2K. And come and see us at ScoopDuck.com. And until next time, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish Podcast.